Mantis shrimps belong to the stomatopod branch of the crustacean family. Worldwide, there are about 700 different species, but they are most abundant in the tropics, flourishing in the warm waters of the western Pacific, where reefs fringe coral islands. As well as the fish which thrive here, a host of smaller animals live hidden in nooks and crannies amongst the coral. Some, like mantis shrimps, are skilled in the art of ambush, practicing crustacean karate on passing prey. These underwater muggers have forelimbs shaped like hinged clubs, which they use to bludgeon their victims to death. A spear, which normally lies flat alongside the club, can also be used to impale soft-bodied prey. Roy Caldwell knows that they can spear through flesh to the bone. He never hunts stomatopods barefoot.
One of the things which fascinates me about stomatopods is how alert they are, how aware of their environment. To locate the animals, one tries to find a burrow entrance, which is almost always a round, smooth hole. These animals are constantly peering out of their burrow and respond to almost any kind of disturbance, so that in trying to capture them, very frequently the animal has seen you before you've seen it, and it's only by locating the burrow or the cavity that they live in that we actually find them. You have to be real careful when you pick it up, not to get your hand over the cavity entrance. If you do, you're likely to get a rather nasty strike from the animal inside.
Cavities and burrows play a vital role in the life of a mantis shrimp, but on sandy ground, keeping a roof overhead has its problems. At the burrow entrance, residents are always on the alert, keeping a wary eye out for any passers-by. A sea cucumber, but it's too large to eat. The burrow is a valuable piece of property, and the shrimp takes great care to keep the entrance clear of drifting sand. It shifts large quantities of sand by throwing it out backwards beneath its body. As well as sand, it excavates stone and loose gravel in order to build its home, carrying the rubble in a sort of basket formed by its front limbs. To a mantis shrimp, the value of a burrow is clearly measured by the effort it takes to dig it. But another way to obtain a burrow is to fight for one. Fights are often vicious affairs. The weapons carried by mantis shrimps vary with the species. These two combatants have long, jagged spears carried beneath their head. But they're well armored, and though during these wrestling matches they try every trick to impale one another, battles between spear carriers are more a trial of strength, and one in which the homeowner, apparently, has the greatest incentive for victory, for it usually wins. But when two of the heavily armoured species fight, there is a considerable risk of injury. Finding ways to minimise this danger has been a major influence in shaping the fighting style of stomatopods. This sepiolid is a small relative of the octopus. It buries itself just below the surface of the sand and, like the mantis shrimp, lies in wait for prey to wander within striking distance. Tiny prawns are the sepiolid's favourite food. The stomatopod also likes prawns. Unlike the sepiolid, which shoots out a tentacle to grab food, the spearing mantis shrimp catches prey with a rapid thrust of the barbed rapier slung beneath its head, rather like the praying mantis from which it gets its name. Once it has speared its food, it transfers it directly to its hidden mouth. With the larder in danger of emptying, it's time to see who else is raiding it. Competition so close to home may be tolerated for a while, but sooner or later the mantis shrimp's patience will be exhausted and the rival chased away. Mantis shrimps which possess clubs are called smashers. Their more powerful weapon enables them to inflict severe injuries on one another. So they're very apprehensive when approaching burrow entrances. An unexpected blow from a resident could easily knock off an eye. But lightweight smashers like this species have evolved strong body armour capable of withstanding a repeated battering. Fighting like gladiators, they hide behind the reinforced shield formed by their coiled tail, using it to parry the strikes of their opponent. The tail may even be pushed into the cavity. Eventually, with the defender exhausted, the challenger dives in head first, and after a struggle, its opponent flees. Crabs have a hard carapace that protects them from many of their enemies, but not from the powerful punches of the smasher. The hammer blows are aimed first of all at the legs, knocking some off to immobilize the crab and prevent it snapping back or escaping. The shrimp then picks up the injured crab with its dexterous mouthparts and carries it back to the burrow to eat it. To take the study of these animals further, Roy Caldwell needs live specimens, and he collects them in Hawaii.
One of the most common mantis shrimp found all around the world in warmer waters is Pseudosquilla ciliata. It's a little guy about 3 inches long. They're very, very hard to find. They blend beautifully with the background. And unless the animal is moving, it is really hard to see them. You know, if you can scare them up and they take off, then you can spot them and you got a chance to get a net over them.
A rather different technique is required for species from deeper waters.
Living throughout the Indo-Pacific is one of the largest of all stomatopods. The burrows of these animals are truly remarkable. They can be up to 32 feet in length. Once you find a burrow, the process I've worked out for catching them involves using a snare. There are a few tricks we can use to make the animal forget about the snare. In some cases, what I've done is pick up a nearby animal which might normally fall into the burrow entrance, something like a sea cucumber or a snail, and you throw that down the burrow entrance. The animal grabs it, comes rushing to throw it out again, forgets about the noose, and then you can catch it.
Roy has to handle this animal with care. Its spears can reach out 5 inches and each carries 13 sharp spines. By giving animals like these artificial burrows, he's able to observe in detail the nature of the defensive strike. Only high-speed photography, slowing down the movement 20 times, reveals the spearing action. The strike of a mantis shrimp is one of the fastest animal movements. Its speed is over 1,000 centimeters a second, and that's against the resistance of the water. In his lab at the University of California in Berkeley, Roy studies the interactions of these miniature warriors. One of his most surprising discoveries is that mantis shrimp can recognize individuals with whom they have previously fought. To investigate this, Roy placed animals in a test arena filled with clean water. At one end of the arena, a hole leads into a small plastic bottle. Mantis shrimp enter such chambers without much hesitation and treat them like home. When an intruder is introduced, they fight for ownership. The victor is the one which keeps the chamber. The fight over, both animals are removed and the test arena cleaned and the water replaced. The victor, still inside the bottle, is placed in its home container. Then a fresh bottle containing water taken from the victor's home container prior to the fight is screwed onto the arena and the defeated animal reintroduced. Although the animal which previously vanquished it is not in the bottle, but only its odour, the intruder this time approaches very hesitantly, carefully examining the entrance, peering into it, and even engaging in mock battles, coiling and displaying at the phantom resident. The defeated stomatopod can identify the chemical name tag of its conqueror in the water inside the bottle, and apparently remembers that it has already fought against this opponent and lost. Even courtship can be an aggressive affair. In one species, the female takes the initiative, chasing and harassing a male of her choice in an attempt to seduce him. Eventually, the male is bullied into submission. He stimulates her back, grabs hold of her, and hangs on until he gets the opportunity to mate. Mantis shrimp are remarkably pugnacious and often, it seems, fearless. Few animals would tackle an octopus 10 times their size and weight. Octopuses seek out crevices to hide in, but they may think twice about approaching one occupied by a mantis shrimp. Fish are their main enemies. Caught in the open, they sometimes stand their ground. A mouthful of striking mantis shrimp can be hard to swallow, and many are spat out again unharmed. The heavyweight champion of the mantis shrimp world is a large green smasher from the Philippines, which can grow to 16 centimeters, 6 inches in length. Its Body and tail are reinforced with calcified plates, knobs and ridges. But as stomatopods get larger, the increased power of their strike outstrips the protection provided by their armor. When these heavyweights hit one another, the effect on an unwary opponent is literally stunning. Coiled up in shock, the concussed individual must keep its armored tail between its head and the attacker to prevent further injury while it recovers. Only females are allowed into a male's burrow, but mating between two such aggressive animals is never a gentle affair. The male has to turn her on her back to copulate. Immediately afterwards, the female turns nasty, and the male must make a quick exit, even if that means breaking through the back door. So, just how powerful are the blows of a large mantis shrimp, and how skilled are they at learning and at manipulating objects? These are questions for which Roy Caldwell has been seeking the answers in his laboratory.
In one particular experiment that we've been running, we present the animals with cubes of different colors. These are plastic cubes, which on one face has been placed a piece of glass. And for the animal to extract the food, it must break through the glass. One color of cube will contain a piece of shrimp. And what we're finding, to our surprise, is that these animals are incredibly good at learning which cube has the food, which cube to open. After the animal has selected the appropriate cube, it returns it to its burrow and literally smashes its way through the glass to extract the shrimp.
The glass doesn't harm the stomatopod, and whilst inexperienced animals at first aim strikes anywhere on the cube, they soon become skilled at selecting the side with the thin glass and breaking it open. Stomatopods have 8 pairs of appendages. The last 3 pairs are walking legs, but amongst the first 5 are long, finger-like hooks used to grasp objects. It's these hooks which reach in and remove food from the cube.
One of our plastic cubes is very much like a snail. There's a thick shell which has to be broken to get through to the meat. When we gave the animal different size members of one particular species, we found that with small snails, it maybe took 4 or 5 strikes to break open the prey. As the prey became larger, the number of strikes that it took to break it open became considerably greater, so that for a fairly large snail, the animal may have to work for an hour or more, delivering up to 500 strikes before he was able to extract the meat.
These pugilists will hit out at anything, so to measure the precise force of the knockout punch, Roy rigged up an oscilloscope wired to a rubber punch bag. When the bag is punched, the impact is transferred via a force transducer to the oscilloscope screen. The results were astonishing. The power of the strike is just a little less than that of a .22 caliber bullet. With this sort of firepower around, it's no surprise most crabs like to keep their heads down. Tiptoeing past a burrow may be another way of keeping out of trouble. But even burrowing out of sight will not protect a crab from a hungry mantis shrimp. The full impact of both clubs can break a crab apart, destroying its nervous system and killing it instantly. The evolution of more formidable weapons enables stomatopods to consume larger prey. That, however, also meant that individuals were able to fight one another more effectively, and therefore they had to develop heavier armor at the same time. Now, few creatures in their world can compete with them. Even the reef's armor-plated battle tank, the slipper lobster, meets its match. It can't outgun a mantis shrimp. A duel like this is high noon for the lobster and any other challenger to the undefeated title holder, the fastest claw on the reef. Bays like this lie between beach and reef throughout the tropics. If coral reefs are the rainforests of the ocean, these sand flats are the deserts, and those dark patches are the grasslands, the savannas. The water here is barely deep enough to drown in, but it's far from lifeless. Stingrays, hunters. But what is there to hunt? The seafloor looks almost sterile. Tourists pass it by without a glance on their way to the reefs beyond. The shellfish the stingrays eat are buried in the sand. In some ways, these open sand flats are just as hostile as a true desert. They're scarred by tidal currents, baked by the sun. But those currents and that warmth can bring fertility, make the desert bloom. Our dolphins lead us from the sand to the savannah. This isn't seaweed, it's seagrass, one of the few kinds of flowering plant that can grow permanently submerged in salty water. Seagrasses thrive in calm, sunlit shallows throughout the tropics. Like the grassy plains of Africa, they have their hunters and their grazers, and those include a very special creature. In the fevered imaginations of sailors too long at sea, this was a mermaid, though the Aboriginal name of sea pig seems more appropriate. In fact, it's a dugong, and it eats seagrass. This submarine savanna has predators too, a sea snake. The grasslands are fertile feeding and breeding grounds for fish. There's always something here for a snake to hunt. So potential prey resort to camouflage. The honeycomb pattern of a boxfish breaks up its outline, helps it merge with its seagrass surroundings. A Moses sole mimics a patch of sand. There seems no limit to the forms a fish can assume. A sea moth, patterned like the sand. And a scorpionfish, sprouting fins and flaps of skin like a clump of seagrass. The seagrass fields have even stranger denizens. Like Medusa's snaky tresses, a living forest rises from the grass. Eels, garden eels. They feed on drifting plankton, so they have to keep their heads up in the current. But that leaves them open to attack, and the seagrass is too short to hide in. The answer is a bolt hole. When danger threatens, the eels sink down out of sight. Not that dugongs pose a threat. They may eat the occasional mollusk or sea pen, but they live almost entirely on seagrass roots. Out in the desert, there's even less cover. For creatures that aren't camouflaged, the safety of a burrow is even more essential. This hole is shared by a pair of prawns and a goby. It seems an unequal partnership. The prawns do all the hard work, digging out the burrow, and the fish just sits there. It gets a hole to hide in, but what does it give in return? The prawns are almost blind, but the fish has good eyesight. The prawns use it as a lookout. So long as it's outside the hole, they're safe. They literally keep in touch with it with their long antennae. When danger threatens, the goby sees it coming, and all the partners take refuge in the burrow. If shallow sand flats are the deserts of the sea, coral heads like this are the oases, places to feed and to shelter. Coral heads support their own community, creatures that wouldn't survive out on the sands. They even have their own scorpionfish, disguised as living coral. Coral heads attract hunters. A triggerfish searches the sand for buried mollusks. A well-directed jet of water can blow their cover. The same technique can be used to upend a sea urchin and so get round its protective spines. This time the urchin escapes. but perhaps a broom-tail wrasse will succeed where the triggerfish failed. Fish like this are small enough to take refuge in the coral. They can flaunt their colours without risk of attack. The brazen display attracts a mate. Out in the desert, courtship must be very different. These are peacock flounders, flattened miracles of sandy camouflage. The male flounder has a dilemma: how to woo a partner without inviting the attentions of passing predators. His secret weapon in this stealthy dance is a flamboyant dorsal fin, invisible at rest, but highly conspicuous erect. Despite the male's best efforts, this female's not impressed. When spotted dolphins are hunting, the flounder's camouflage is tested to the limit. Even buried in the sand, they may not escape detection. Just a mouthful for a dolphin, but the last dance for a flounder. A column of spiny lobsters. Just as tanks in the desert are vulnerable to attack from the air, so even the heaviest crustacean armor can be penetrated. From the largest dolphin to the smallest fish, almost everything that swims here depends to some degree on seagrass for a living. There are a dozen kinds of seagrass, and in these shallow sunlit waters they grow fast, turning the sun's energy into food for grazers such as goatfish and rabbitfish. Seagrass beds can produce the equivalent of 6 crops of wheat a year. The fish they feed are food in turn for hunters like dolphins. If dolphins are the lions of these submarine savannas, dugong are the elephants, the ultimate converters of greenery into animal matter. In fact, elephants are their closest land-based relatives. Compared to other grazers of these underwater meadows, dugongs are giants. They can grow to 3 meters and weigh almost as much as a cow. Indeed, they're also called sea cows. the last survivors with their New World cousins, the manatees, of a group of mammals that's been hunted almost to extinction. Dugongs live almost entirely on seagrass. Their downward-facing mouths are ideally suited to grubbing up roots and rhizomes. A heavy skeleton provides the ballast to keep them on the bottom. The 30 meters of gut they need to digest all that vegetation account for their portly appearance. To the sailors of times past, dugongs with their mermaid tails were sirens, enchantresses whose songs lured ships to destruction in the shallows. But to the Aboriginal people of Australia, the dugong sings a different song. Back in the dream time, the dugong lived on land with her brother, the moon. Then, one day, collecting lotus roots in a billabong, she was bitten by a leech. She took refuge in the sea, leaving the moon alone with his reflection. In those distant times, land and sea were alive, every rock and every grain of sand a part of one great vital force. Even today, the sand can still come to life as hatchling turtles head for the sea and the seagrass that will be their nursery. At night, the water comes alive too. Infant seahorses prance in the plankton. Down below, the parents of these fishy foals anchor themselves in meadows of seagrass. Even more curious, a sea dragon, a miniature monster hunting the grassy glades for tiny crustaceans. Night is the time for plankton eaters of many kinds, from the small to the unbelievably huge. A manta ray. Mantis can grow to 7 meters or more, but on the tiniest of creatures, channeled into their open mouths by those forward-pointing flaps. At dawn, the manta's dance will end. The plankton on which it feeds sinks into the deep. The rising sun lights other hunters. On a falling tide, some of these sand flats are exposed, roosting places for pelicans. The dawn patrol sets out in search of food. At low water, the coastal shallows are even shallower. The bottom's now within reach of questing beaks. Pelicans share their hunting grounds with dolphins, drawn here by the wealth of fish around the seagrass. These shallow, sheltered waters are nurseries for fish of many kinds. They come inshore from the reefs to spawn in the underwater meadows. For a dolphin, the seagrass fields give easy pickings. The fish may be small, but their numbers are huge. A dugong mother and her calf. Dugongs can live for 70 years or more. Females don't give birth until they're at least 10 years old. The calf will stay with its mother for the first 18 months of its life, even riding on her back for protection. Dugongs are tied to the warm and shallow waters where the seagrass grows. It's the mainstay of their diet. Dolphins too use the seagrass savannas to breed. There's less risk from sharks away from the deep water. But as fish eaters, they're free to roam where they will. A sunken ship becomes a man-made oasis. Decks where mariners once trod now give secure footing for corals, denied an anchorage in the shifting sands around the wreck. This artificial coral reef shelters fish by the thousand. Many will have started their lives offshore, spawned among the seagrass. They move to the reef
as they mature. Coral reefs support a richness of life unrivaled in the tropical seas. That richness owes much to the fertility of the bays behind the reefs, the warm and sheltered nurseries of the sea grass. Less spectacular perhaps, but a vital part of the economy of the ocean. Our bay watch has come to an end. Here our dolphin guides will leave us. The dolphins swim on, out into the blue.